Welcome back to Sub2 Investor. My name is Hans, and in this episode, I'm talking about the power of amortization. The reason I'm talking about this amazing secret weapon that we have, this is how banks make their money, by the way. The reason I'm talking about this is because I just had to take a property back that I sold on seller financing. But what's amazing about this opportunity is that I get another chance to reset the clock in terms of the amortization. And like I just said, this is how lenders make their money. It's with the power of amortization. So if you don't understand amortization, you better understand it quickly, because it's the reason why we're able to make such enormous spreads over time on these subject to seller financing transactions. So stay tuned to learn more. Yep. It happened. This was the first property that I've had to take back, which I sold on seller financing. In fact, actually, that's not true. I think this is the second, because I had one buyer who really wanted a different property. So I ended up just transferring them over to a different property. And so then I placed somebody new in their old property. Different story. But this is the first scenario where I've had somebody just say, I want to get out of this house that they're buying from me on a land contract, because something happened in this individual's life, which put them in a distressed situation. They didn't live in the house anymore. They were actually renting the house out, which they were allowed to do. And they had a lot of other things, legal things going on, and I think some relationship things going on, which it was just all too much for them to handle. They really wanted to break ties with the past. And this house, which they've told me multiple times, was such an incredible blessing to help them out during this difficult time in their life. Well, now this house carries all of this emotional baggage for them and is just too much. So they essentially wanted to give that property back to me, and that's what happened. Now, this is going to happen from time to time. If you go down this rabbit hole of seller financing, which is an amazing niche in the real estate investing industry, you're going to sell some properties on, it might be a wrap or a contract for deed, also known as a land contract, or at least an option. And sometimes those end buyers are going to give the property back to you. They're not going to perform, or they're just going to want to get out, or they're going to want to sell or refinance. And so there are some bridges to cross if you ever get to that point. In general, this has not happened very much, and I'm thankful for that. It's what's allowed us to scale up enough cash flow to really be financially independent. But occasionally, you're going to get one back or two. Don't freak out. There's a huge opportunity in it. And this is why I want to talk about amortization. It's the hidden weapon from the perspective of being a lien lord, right? Being somebody who does seller financing. Amortization is how banks make their money. I'm going to show you the amortization schedule on this property and how much we were able to make just in the interest income. And then I'm going to show you how we're going to get to reset that, and it's going to be amazing. But this is why banks have the largest buildings in any city that you go into. You're going to see Wells Fargo, Chase, Bank of America, US Bank, what have you. Okay, it's not the only reason, but this is a large reason why. It's because they use amortization. So you really need to wrap your head around amortization. Let me say one other thing. When you sell a property on seller financing, as opposed to holding it for a long-term rental or a short-term rental, mid-term rental, whatever, you do sacrifice a couple things. Really, two main things you sacrifice. Number one is the appreciation potential on these properties over a long period of time. Now, we're able actually to mitigate that a lot just by marking the value of the house up a little bit on when we sell it, because we're offering this value of seller financing. So we're able to really get a premium plus on the sales price, which makes up for some of the lack of that appreciation that we're going to get in the future. However, if we were to hold on to that same property for, say, 10 or 20 years, undoubtedly we'd see a ton of appreciation, possibly depending on where you're at and what your market is. So we are sacrificing that when we do sell and seller financing. The other thing we're sacrificing is depreciation, the ability to depreciate for tax purposes these properties as investment properties. You're no longer able to do that if you sell on seller financing. Now, there is a caveat. If you do take advantage of depreciation for your rental properties, you will have to recapture that when you sell down the road. So that's a catch on that one. So really the big one is that you're forfeiting appreciation. But in my opinion, there are so many benefits to selling with seller financing that it far outweighs that sacrifice. And one of the major benefits is amortization. So this is what I'm talking about. Let me show you first the property, and then I'll show you the amortization schedule, and we'll talk about it. All right. Unfortunately, I don't have great exterior photos of the house, but this will give you a sense of what the condition of the house was when I bought it. We did do a cosmetic rehab, and so it looked quite a bit better. We did carpet paint basically to make this house a lot prettier looking. But here are photos of the property that we purchased back in 2021. I highlighted some things in these photos, just things that needed to be repaired, which we took care of. That was an awesome truck bed thing in that kid's bedroom. My kids would love that. So it's a 3-bedroom, 1-bathroom house, and the area is decent. It's a decent school district, but not fantastic. I would probably classify this neighborhood as a sort of B, probably a solid B, if not a B minus neighborhood. But the house's value, we'll talk about the house's value. It's probably worth about 100, 110, between 100 and 120, really depending on what the exact condition of the property is right now. That up panel has been updated. So yeah, here are some basic photos of the house. You know, we took care of the mold. We updated the panel. Actually, our tenant buyer updated the panel. We repainted, made everything look nice. Actually cleared a plumbing blockage, installed a new HVAC and water heater as well. So we did have an investment in this property, which we recouped most of our investment back from the down payment of our seller finance buyer. Updated those floors as well. All right, so that gives you a sense of the condition of the property when we bought it. We put about $7,000 or $8,000 into it to really make it shine, and then we recouped, I think, $7,000 back on a down payment on this property. So we got most of our expenses back. We did get this deal from a wholesaler, by the way. So again, targeting subject to deals through wholesalers, still a very good strategy to pursue. I like to be messaging those wholesalers on my phone individually instead of buying these deals off of their marketing ad copy. So I like to try and get these deals before they hit the market of investor buyers, if that makes sense. Different topic, but let me show you the amortization schedule that we created with our end buyer. And so this generated the payoff amount if she were ever to go sell the property, and she decided ultimately she did not want to sell the property because she probably would just break even and might even have to bring a little cash to close anyways. And she hadn't held it for that long, and it makes sense. We had a downturn in the market, pretty typical. If you go to buy a house and you try to sell it 1 year later or even 2 years later, oftentimes if you haven't had a hotly appreciating market or have done a lot of work to the property, you're not going to be able to sell due to a lag of equity. So she understood that, thankfully. But here's the amortization schedule that we created. And here is what I want you to observe. Up here, we have the month. So it's a 360 month, a 30-year amortized loan. And it just goes down the list in terms of numbers of months. So it's first month, second month, third month, fourth month, all the way down to 360 months, which again is 30 years, 360 months, same thing. You have the date, then you have the beginning principal balance, you have the buyer's payment, that's the principal and interest payment, okay? Because taxes and insurance don't get factored into amortization because they fluctuate on a yearly basis, right? So the payment is just the principal and interest. Now, it's broken down over here. So let's begin from the left. We started this on April 1st of 2022. The beginning balance after a $7,000 down payment was $103,000. Now, the monthly payment for the principal and interest is $825 a month, which is broken down into the following two columns, the interest and the principal. These two numbers, the interest and the principal columns, are always going to equal $825 every single month of the 360 months. So at the end of the first month, you can see that she's paid principal of only $56.86. So her ending balance, right, we're taking the beginning balance and we subtract the principal she paid for the first month, and then that's how we get our ending balance, $102,943. The next month, she begins with that new beginning balance. She makes her payment. Now a little bit more goes toward principal, and that comes off. For her ending balance is now a little bit lower. And then the following month, it's the exact same thing. She begins with that new principal balance or the beginning balance. This month, she still pays $825 every single month for principal and interest, but her principal payment or pay down goes up a little bit every single month. So she's paying a little bit off toward the house. She's paying down the house a little bit. Now, if you notice, this pattern continues all the way down the amortization schedule. You can see these principal amounts slowly increasing over time, and until we get to the very end of the loan, when now those principal balances are quite large. The very final principal payments makes her ending balance zero. Now she's paid off the loan. But here's what's crazy. With amortization, the interest gets stacked in like the first half to 3/4 of the loan. This will depend on the interest rate and how much is borrowed and all that. But in this particular example, look at how skewed the interest and the principal ratios are. And this isn't my formula. This is a standard bank amortization formula that I'm using. So look at the very first payments is wildly disproportionate. She's paying $768 in interest and only $56 in principal. She's paying $56 in principal. If we divide that by her total P&I payment, that's about 7% of her P&I payment is comprised of principal, which means 93% is comprised of interest from the get-go. So the majority of her payment is interest, and this is going to be for basically every amortization schedule that exists. It's going to work like this. Now, you can see that the interest payments do go down as the principal payments go up, but what's insane is that when do the principal payments catch up and exceed the amount of the interest payments? At what month or what year does that happen? Well, let's just scroll down to find out. We keep going here. Still, the interest payments are quite a bit higher, until here we're very close. 414, 410. Okay, here we go. 411, 413 at month 268. Finally, the principal portion of her payment has exceeded the interest portion. So how many years in exactly is that? What's 268 divided by 12? So a little bit into year 22 of this amortization, finally, the majority of her payment is going to pay down principal, which is just bananas. It takes 22 years plus to get to that point on this particular loan. Guys, this is the power of amortization, because the way a lender makes their money, it's through the interest payments, right? It's through the interest income primarily is the way that a lender makes their income from lending. Now, since we are also the sellers in this transaction, we're not only lenders, we're also sellers. There is some capital gain usually that we're going to realize as well, but it's mostly interest. So what's going to happen when I take this property back and then turn around and do this again? Let me show you what's going to happen. Okay, so you can see that at the end of year 2022, I totaled the amount of the interest collected and the amount of principal collected. At the end of 2022, we collected nearly $7,000 of interest income and only $527 of principal. In year 2023, we collected a little bit more. We collected a little over $9,000 in interest income and now $760 of principal income. Okay, and then we're taking the property back. Here we are at the end of January. So what's going to happen is I'm going to add this $9,139 to the previous year of interest income, $6,897. So we've made in under 2 years just about $16,000 on the interest income alone from this deal, not to mention any capital gain that we might have as well. What's crazy is that I get to reset this clock. I get to place another buyer in the property and do this all over again. This is why I'm always getting bombarded by all the loans we've taken subject to by the lenders saying, now's a great time to refinance. Rates have just come down. Take advantage of this amazing opportunity now. I'm constantly getting bombarded by the lenders on the deals that we've taken subject to, right? Because we have our email address in there. We're always getting these email notifications from the lender urging us to refinance. Why do they want us to do that? Even when rates come back down, it's in the lender's best interest because they can reset the entire clock on amortization. They can begin collecting principal on month 1. They can begin collecting that big chunk of interest from month 1 all the way down to 360, right? Because once you get about halfway or 3/4 of the way into that loan, that might take 20 years, then finally you're actually paying that house down a lot more. So lenders are really in the amortization business. And so this benefit vastly outweighs, in my opinion, the deficit of sacrificing that appreciation, right? Now, again, this is going to vary on your market. Like if you buy a house in a highly appreciating market, it might be worth just to hold on to that thing for the appreciation benefits. But in a middle America market, these houses, they are appreciating generally, but they're not going bananas. And so I'm more than happy to just settle for the passivity of this interest income as a seller financer rather than having to deal with tenants and do make readies and tenant turnover and evictions and late rent payments and all this stuff that I have to deal with, plus dealing with bad property management, all this nonsense. I do not want to have to deal with that. So I hope that helps you understand the power that we have as seller financiers when we go and sell a property with seller financing, just how incredible of a tool this is. Don't take it for granted, guys. Yes, you might sacrifice some depreciation on your taxes and future appreciation, but when you get to come back in, take a property back and reset the amortization clock, in my opinion, it totally is worth it. You can also always offer to refinance your buyer if they've gone out and gotten pre-approved for a loan to refinance you out of your deal. Well then, heck, show me that pre-approval. And if I can beat that interest rate, I'll beat that interest rate and give you an even better deal, because then I get to reset the amortization clock yet once again in refinancing my end buyer, so that now I can begin to produce that interest income again in that top heavy fashion from month 1 onward. That's awesome. If you found this video helpful, please like and subscribe. Leave me a comment if I left anything out, what else you'd like to hear me talk about, and I'll see you on the next one. Peace.